Hello, Riderflex Nation. Steve Urban here. More career advice and job interviewing tips for you. And today, why salary isn't the biggest factor when deciding whether or not to take the job, and my thoughts around that topic. You know, there are so many different variables when you're considering an offer from somebody. The commute time, the benefits, the title, the person you'd be working for, vacation, your passion for the product, whether or not it's a growth industry, whether or not there's travel involved, whether or not there's a chance for advancement, etc. I mean, the list is just on and on, right? There's just so many factors. I think often people just get caught up in the base pay, right? It's all about that base pay number. And they're trying to design their personal finances around this base pay number because somehow they've got it in their head that if they just get to a certain base pay that their life's going to be better, right? They have certain bills at home, whatever, certain financial obligations, and a lot of people wrap their head around, well, if I could just get to 100,000, right, or whatever the number is, if I can just get to 200,000, or if I can just get to 50,000, my life will be so much better. And so it's all about the base pay with so many people that I interview and that I've dealt with in my career as I've hired people and supervised people. And let me just give you my life experiences on that and share my thoughts. First of all, most people my age, let's even call it, I'm 50, but most people probably 40 years and older that have had some success in their career will tell you it's not all about the money. And the older you get, for sure, that is just so true. It's not all about that base pay number. For example, and I could probably give a million examples on this podcast, at this stage in my own professional life, I work remotely. In fact, my entire team at Riderflex, we all work remotely. So you can work from wherever you have an internet connection. If you want to buy a cabin in the mountains and work virtually from there, if you want to work from a little hut on the beach, it doesn't matter as long as you have an internet connection. That ability to work remotely, there is so much value in that. In fact, it's hard to put a number on it. People have said, well, what's that worth? Well, I guess you could do simple math and calculate what it would cost you to commute, 30 miles a day and run all the numbers on gas and car maintenance. But beyond that, what's it worth to you with regards to time, right? And the time you have with your family because you don't have to commute, etc. And I'm just using commuting and working remotely as one example. There are so many other things. Another example would be if you have to travel a lot, right? Early on in my career, and I think for a lot of people, the thought of travel is appealing, and everybody thinks there's this glamorous life for traveling. Trust me, that gets old real fast. Living in airplanes and hotels, I don't care if it's a 5-star hotel, and I don't care if you're flying first class all the time, it gets old. And so there are just all these factors that really, I think, play into decisions on whether or not you should take the job or take the offer. And I think it's personalized to a certain extent, right? Whether you're sick of traveling, whether you're looking to work remote, whether, if 4 weeks or 5 weeks of vacation and great benefits is really your primary driver, whatever your primary objectives are out of the laundry list of reasons to take a job, pick 3 or 4 of those and really just focus in on those and ask yourself, if these things were on the offer letter, would it improve my life experiences? Would it give me more time to do the things I want to do or spend more time with my family, etc.? I can just tell you it's not about the base number. And in fact, even for my own life, I was a heck of a lot more miserable when I made great money than I have been when I've made less money, but it was a different job, right? I either had a different boss, or maybe I didn't have to travel as much, or I got to work remotely, or whatever it might be. As I think back on my career, the best times weren't when I had the biggest base salary. I'll put it that way. And I think if you ask enough executives, they'd probably agree. Most of them would probably agree. It's just not about that base number. Now, so the point there is, decide what other things will matter to you to improve your overall lifestyle beyond whether or not your check has $500 more a month in it. Because the reality is, no matter what you make, you will end up adjusting your personal finances around it. Everybody thinks, well, I have to make this certain amount. I got to have this certain amount for my current situation. Well, life happens, things happen. You end up making less or more, and you will adjust your personal finances around that. So stop thinking it has to be this certain number. You'll make the proper adjustments, and it'll be fine. What matters more is all of the other variables that I just mentioned. Maybe it's a crappy office environment, right? Like, for example, if somebody, let's say you're making $75,000 a year, but you have a nice office, a private office, and you have a 10-minute commute, and you're making $75,000 a year, and you have great benefits, and you love your boss. Okay. Now all of a sudden somebody offers you $100,000 a year. It's $25,000 more a year. Oh my gosh, your eyes get real big. You think about all these things you could do with the money. But here's the deal. Now it's an hour commute. It's a cubicle where you're right next to 10 other people in their cubicles. The boss is an asshole, and you don't even like the product of the company. And by the way, you got to go back to 1 week's vacation when you were at 4 weeks of vacation. I mean, just really add that up. Is it really worth it? I can tell you, most of the time it's not. Okay, there's so many things to factor in. People often ask me this question too. They'll say, well, how much more money would my offer have to be over my current job for me to take it? What's the proper amount? 10% more, 15% more, 20% more? What's the magic number? Well, it's really hard to put that in black and white because of all these variables we've been talking about on this podcast. But I will answer the question this way. Let's just say everything matches, right? Everything else matches. The benefits, the commute, the product, whatever. Like, let's just say all the other variables are identical. How much more money would it take for me to want to switch jobs? And what would I encourage you to do? I think my standard answer is probably about 20%, somewhere around 20%. I can't tell you how many times somebody's come into my office over the course of my career, and they'll say, "Well, listen, hey, I'm gonna have to put in my notice because this other company offered me $5,000 more a year," and I want to just, I want to. I'm like, have you done the math on what $5,000 more a year is really gonna do for you after taxes, and you really break that down by month? Like, really, like, you really think that's worth the change? So my point is, if all the variables are the same, whether it's the commute or whatever, probably 20%, maybe a little less, but probably 20%. I would say make sure it's a big enough number that it's truly going to make a difference in your life, right? Here's another way to look at it. If your take-home pay, I'm talking after taxes, if your take-home pay is $10,000 a month, and another job offers you something that allows you to take home $12,000 a month, I'm talking about after taxes, would I encourage you to switch jobs for that? No way. But if you go from $10,000 a month to $20,000 a month, and your personal income, bring home cash, is doubled all of a sudden, that's a different deal. And that's the time that you probably want to make a move, assuming all the other variables are the same that we talked about. So I could go on, and this podcast could drag out for another hour, but the summary is this. Stop thinking it's all about the base pay. Trust me, it's not. It's about quality of life and all the other things that I mentioned in this podcast, all the way down to, where you have to drive to work every day, to where you sit, who you have to sit next to, etc. It's about all of those other things. Those really matter at the end of the day. So that's number one. And then the second piece of the podcast summary is, assuming the variables are the same, I would encourage you to wait for about a 20% increase before I made the move. And there is your Riderflex tip of the day. As always, folks, you can call in or email us with questions. We'll help you in any way we can. Our podcast can be heard just about anywhere. Visit riderflex.com to learn more about us. Thanks a lot for listening, and have a great day.